I'm Elder,
Mrs. Elder.
and today we are very happy to have Kay Wilson as our guest. Hi, Kay.
Hey guys, hi
Hey,
tweeps.
hey, how's it going? You're looking
Great.
good.
You really are, and it's a little, nice looking place you have over there too. So, but I'm very happy that you're able to be here with us, and it's this is going to be exciting. I'm very psyched about interviewing you, and so is Mrs. Elder. Um, the as
I am too because I never know what I'm going to say when it's live.
that's part of
We
the
don't
fun
have
of
the
it.
bleeping thing, so be careful,
Right,
okay?
yeah. So, um, so again, for the people that aren't aware, Kay Wilson became, it's hard to say the word famous, but she became well known as a survivor of a really horrendous machete attack, terror attack, in the year 2010, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
In which she somehow survived, and she used that as, and we've seen this with many people that were victims of terror attacks in Israel. She used it in order to start doing amazing things. So if we can just ask you if you can just quickly go through, doesn't even have to be quickly, but if you can just go through the events of that day, and what exactly happened, and who you were with, and what happened afterwards.
If it's not
Okay,
too
guys.
painful.
Apologies to all you tweeps who've heard it before, but without the context, it's impossible to understand the rest of the conversation. So, in December 2010, I was working as an Israeli tour guide, and I was guiding an American Christian friend, Christine Lucan, and we're on a nature trail in the middle of the afternoon on this side of the Green Line, our side, and we sat down on a rock, and from about 20 meters, 60 feet in American language, I saw two men crouched in the bushes. And I could look, I'd been here 35 years, and I could tell by the way they're dressed, they're Palestinians. So I suspected robbery, and I told my friend not to make a noise because I didn't want them to see us. But one stands up and he asks me in Hebrew if I have any water. So I just say, I wish, and they go away. And I was feeling very nervous because I thought it was probably a robbery. So I tell my friend we need to get back to the car. I didn't want to panic her. She's following me. I take out my little penknife just in case they're going to come and grab my bag. And as we're walking down the hills, through the thicket very quickly, she screams. I turn around and one of them pounces on me. And I'm wrestling with him, and I manage to stab him in the nuts. But he's bigger than me, takes out my penknife, hoists me to my feet, and then he takes out a machete. And Christine's being held by the other one, and he has a kitchen knife to her throat, and then we're there for half an hour in, I like to say, really one of the most beautiful places in Israel, in a beautiful pine forest. And I can hear the birds tweeting, and it's unbelievable. And after 30 minutes, they go through my backpack and they find my Israeli ID. Up until that point, I'd been pretending I was a tourist. I said we're both Christians. Nothing works. And they find my ID, and it was the old one. It said Jew, Israeli. And then from that point, one of them tells me to take off my shoes, takes out my shoelaces, and they tie our hands behind our back with my shoelaces. He takes off my Star of David. And then one of them chops up Christine's fleece, and they gag us. And then I'm going to read just 2 paragraphs from my book, because it's very hard for me to just improvise and tell the really most disturbing part. But being the eternal opportunist, the rage less travelled. That was an advert break. So we're standing there, shoeless, bound and gagged. Christine and I stand side by side. Her assailant moves away a few feet to make another phone call. This time I can hear what's being said. Even though my Arabic is limited, I understand he's asking about a driver. As the sun begins to set, a realization dawns. We are going to be kidnapped. Instead of being shoved down the hill into a waiting car, I'm pushed to my knees. A piece of fleece is placed over my head. It covers only my left eye. Out of the corner of my right, I suddenly see a light, the sun glinting off his machete. I no longer hear the birds or the crickets or the rustle of the leaves. I hear only my heartbeat. Numb to fear and empty to feeling, I kneel motionless and wait for him to hack off my head. Allahu Akbar, Jesus. Shema Israel, I say, as he stabs me in the back with such force it knocks me to the ground. I'm laying on my right side with him kneeling on my left thigh. My bones crunch and my flesh rips. I am on fire. Every time he plunges his foot-long knife into my side and back, it causes a pain so searing that everything goes momentarily white. Sometimes the serrated steel wedges into bone and he has to tug to get it out. At other times, the knife slides easily into and out of flesh and organs. I can't take it in. I'm 46 years old. I'm too young to die. Murder is something that happens to other people. It can't be happening to me. The seconds between each stab are as much of a torment as the knife itself. He isn't in a hurry. Each blow is harder, deeper, wider, and more excruciating than the previous one. Please, God, if only he would stab me in a different place. Christine is 6 feet away, lying on her back. With her hands tied behind her, she has nothing but her shoulders to try to fend off his knife. Groaning and whimpering, she writhes and squirms. Grunting and heaving, he hacks and cleaves. Oh God, Jesus, she gurgles over the songs of the little birds. My only chance is to play dead. I keep my eyes open because I think it's more convincing, and in doing so, to save my life, I watch her die. Then they're gone. My puppy lets out a yelp. They must have killed her too. Unable to care, I just lie there. But then the ground begins to vibrate, its footsteps, they're coming back. I'm rolled onto my back. The orange, purple and red sky is suddenly obscured by a silhouette of jagged steel. He thrusts the blade into my chest, where my Star of David had been. I don't blink, flinch, or move. They leave, and I have one last commission in life, and that is to die nearer where I parked the car so the police could find my body. And after a terrible struggle, I managed to stand. I'm still tied up, and I just want to get a bit nearer, look for my own grave. So with your permission, I'm going to read just one more paragraph.
Sure.
Turning my back on Christine's death, I take the first step towards my own. Cold rips through my bones. It's like being inside a fridge. There's so little air I could be breathing through a straw. Thistles rip my ankles. Thorns tear my feet. With my tongue, I try to loosen the bits of acidic vomit caked to the roof of my mouth and open up a bigger airway. Faces of the people I love appear in the gnarled tree trunks. They are contorted with grief. The branches become their arms and claw at my clothes. They hold me back from my grave. To think that I will never see them again, or hug them, or tell them that I love them, sends shudders through my body. It's too late to say the things I never had the courage to say. Never again will I hear the howl of the wind, or laughter, or music, or see the endless ocean and the desert massifs. My home, my land, my life, and those that I love have come to an end. So, gag bound barefoot, in Yiddish, the word kvetch? It's to confess.
Yes.
Oh boy, yeah.
I had 6 snapped ribs, 30 broken bones. Bones had splintered into my lungs and diaphragm, 13 machete wounds, broken shoulder, dislocated shoulder, broken shoulder blade, crushed sternum, and in that state, gag-bound barefoot, I walked uphill through the thicket for over a mile until I got to a couple of families at a picnic table. Police, ambulance, army, get rushed to hospital. I always have to say this, okay? And I think it's also my British roots, and it's also the reality of Israel. I mean, I love irony, and I remember I'm just about to be operated on. I'm completely naked, got the head thing on and all this. Going under, he says, count backwards. And the last words I heard, and this is the irony, the last words I heard were from a Jewish surgeon to his colleague, and he said, Muhammad tali tasakin, which in English is, Muhammad, pass me the knife. It was an Arab Muslim Israeli surgeon who saved my life. Police blackout for 6 weeks. I'm interviewed in the hospital throughout the night by the Secret Service and the police. And the murderers were they were apprehended very quickly because, don't touch your face, because I stabbed him and his blood on my sleeve enabled the police to swab DNA. So as I said, they were apprehended. The news broke after 6 weeks. And these same savages also confessed to not only murdering Christine, but they murdered another lady, Neteblat Sorek, who was murdered 10 months previously, and her murder had remained unsolved. So that's the story. I was in court after a few months, Israeli bureaucracy goes on and on and on, my gosh.
Yeah.
And I also try to remember to say this. There I am in this little tiny Israeli courtroom, and the judge turns to the murderers, who were yawning and giggling, and he said, but why did you murder an American Christian? And they said, and it's also on an Israeli documentary, they said, we thought she was a Jew. So Mrs. Elder, that's chapter 1.
Yeah.
Of the rest of my life.
It's heartbreaking.
I don't even know what to say, because it's just anything I say would take away from your experience. It's really something. As you were talking, it just occurred to me, and I never really put the two together, because we didn't see that. It's a relatively unusual type of terror attack in the forest. But I remember Kobe Mandel also was there's also hiking around there. How many others are you aware of that are like that sort of attack?
Well, look, I even hate to use these political terms. Kobe lived in Tekoa, which is in Judea and Samaria, or
right.
Some people would say in the West Bank, whatever you want to call it. Ours was in Israel proper.
Mm-hmm.
So I am aware of things that happened in Judea and Samaria. There was a young woman called Rena. I can't remember her name.
That was recent. That was last year.
Spring.
That was just last year. Yeah.
A year ago.
Yeah.
I can't remember her name. But as far as like machete attacks in Israel proper, I don't know. I'm not really particularly aware of them too much.
Okay.
There's been like cases where I've met other survivors of terrorism where they've been stabbed, multiple times in a supermarket and managed to survive.
Sure.
But actually, the whole thing about our attack, it's the same with any terror attack. It was very predatory.
Yes.
They slept in the forest. They crossed the so-called. There wasn't even a fence there, right?
Yeah,
This is in the days where there wasn't like a wall or a fence. And I do want to say that there's plenty of other picnickers and hikers around, but they'd actually slept in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
The previous night. They brought a picnic with them, and they said, and it's in the protocol of the court, that they were laid in wait to murder Jews. And
Yeah.
I mean, look, it would have been terrible if Christine was a Jew, not a Jew.
Right,
That's a matter from a humanitarian point of view.
But it proves that this isn't a political thing. That there is a huge religious component to this. That it is anti-Semitism that's animating this, and these are the sort of things nobody really wants to talk about. When you started writing about it, and this is, I remember I first met you when I gave you the Hasby Award for this article, which I'm bringing up on the screen.
Could you say that again? I just want everybody to hear that.
Yeah.
I got an award.
You're the winner of the Hasby Award. I'll even show the. I have a picture of you. I'm just showing up on the screen over here of you receiving the award when Honest Reporting was helping host us. The award, you're getting it from Yisrael Meidad.
Haspies should be done again.
We probably should. I agree. We should do it.
Elder, listen, I named my book, by the way.
Yes.
I named my book after the title of the article.
I know, that's what I'm saying, but the title of the article is what made me, was what we gave you the award for. But it's, I know, but it's fantastic. It's your point that you made in this article, which is, and it's a very important point, and I'd like you to elaborate, is that we're told not to be angry. We're told not to, to that they're, to be, and especially like a British, you probably know this more than anybody else. To be always polite, to be always, to be, never really let your emotions show. And you're saying pretty much the opposite, that rage is an important emotion. And can you just go into that a little bit?
Yeah, well, because we're not hearing much about snowflake land since Corona. It's gone off the radar a little bit. But we live in a society. I don't think it's true for Israel, by the way. But the West has become very, what would be the word? Like, the worst thing you can do is to rage or to hate. You mustn't hate. And they're both these words, rage and hate, they're viewed entirely as four-letter words. Now, I'm saying, when I'll say it again. I have to say it every time I speak as well. I do not forgive these savages. I hate them for what they did. I hate them for stealing Christine's life and her future and her generations, okay? But just like when when you fall in love, it's like, there's feelings and it's amazing, but after a while, let's all be honest, we're all grown-ups here. It kind of dies out, the feeling, all right? So love isn't just about a feeling, it's often a choice. It's putting somebody before yourself. And the same would be for rage or hate. I mean, after the murder, I fantasized for months. I enjoyed it. It was very gratifying that there would be some greasy, fat Israeli prison guard kicking the shit out of them. I mean, it was the only thing that gave me some kind of peace of mind. But you can't live in that place, all right? I couldn't. It wasn't that I felt bad about it. It just took its natural course. So for me, when I talk about rage and hate now, I'm talking about a moral choice never to forgive and to do everything I can to make sure that these savages will never ever get out of prison. All right? So it's like rage is a moral necessity. We must hate evil. We must hate evil because it destroys families and it tears apart communities and it destroys the individual. And I don't understand and I do not endorse. I mean, God help me if my family, if I'd have been murdered and they went around forgiving everybody on my behalf, I mean, I can't even conceive of that.
Yeah.
And what I'm learning, not having grown up in a religious home, but I'm learning that the Jewish response, and here I'm a proud Jew, the Jewish response to evil is to hate it. And it's the only thing, too, that validates somebody who's been a victim of an attack or abuse. We should hate it. So that's what I mean by,
And I
it doesn't
certainly
mean like if somebody cuts me up in traffic, I'm not going to blow their head off because
Right.
I'm angry with the terrorist.
Right.
And the other thing about it, Elder, if I may say so, what I've had to do is to direct my rage and limit it. I direct it at the murderers and I limit it to them. I direct it towards the Palestinian Authority who rewards them financially. I direct it to the British government who obscenely funds terrorism. But that means by directing it at the people who are guilty for murder, and all three of those have blood on their hands, by directing it and limiting it, that's what's enabled me to reach out to the Arab Muslim Palestinian community. And I'm proud to say many of these people are really, really dear friends of mine.
And I certainly want to get into that because that's truly remarkable. I mean, you're a remarkable person altogether, but it's like compounded by the fact that you are using the experience of what happened against you, and you're using it to actually help Palestinians who are and try to change their lives. And we're going to get into it, but it's completely mind-blowing to me, and I don't think most people are able to do that. Although again, Mrs. Elder and I have interviewed other terror victims that in Israel, and very often they do end up going into altruistic and charity type work, which again is just amazing to me, and it's something that's really positive about Israel altogether. So I definitely want to get into that. It's because how do you even make that distinction when at that point? you clearly are upset, these awful things happen to you. It's done by a group of people. It's and again, let me just ask you this: the prisoners. I'm assuming they're still in prison, as they haven't been traded for any sort of a swap or anything. I hope not.
Please God, although they're talking about prisoner exchange, although we don't know who's going to be next on the list.
Yeah. Do you know? Again, you mentioned like you implied pay for slay. That the Palestinian government pays these terrorists and their terrorist families. Do you have any idea specifically how much Christine's murderer gets paid?
Yeah. In fact, I'm looking on my fridge, but I don't want everybody to see my house.
Yeah.
But Palestinian Media Watch, they give updated reports about this. And I think over a year ago, it must have been over a year ago, they came up with a figure of $70,000 each. That's over a year ago. Now, the longer these people are in prison, or the more people they've murdered, the higher their execution stipend.
Yes.
It's unthinkable.
That's definitely a higher number by far than the average salary of a Palestinian. A Palestinian laborer. It has to be.
Yeah. Now, but the thing is, when I talk to these, people who live under the Palestinian Authority, friends of mine, I just want to empower them. I don't feel sorry for them, like just the average Palestinian. There's plenty of Israelis who are in really unfortunate situations, like people who've survived terrorism, people who've had their loved ones blown up or mowed down, or Holocaust survivors. I'm not going to buy into their victim card. The whole Palestinian Authority is an industry of victimhood. And in my personal experience, for anybody to be held in perpetual victimhood is not kind, helpful, moral, or true. Okay? So what I'm saying is, I think also the friendship, it touches on your point here, is I will not endorse their victimhood. They're not in a Zionist ghetto. So I want to empower them. And when I talk to these people, I don't know when they will have the courage, and I'm not blaming them for it because they'll get executed. But they tell me, the Palestinians tell me, they say, Kay, please speak up for us. It's obscene that prisoners are being, murderers are being paid such huge sums of money, and we're on 600-700 shekel a month. So the irony is, and there is an irony here, that I'm not just speaking up for those no longer here who cannot speak for themselves. I'm speaking for the Arabs under the Palestinian Authority, who are too scared because of their own brutal leadership.
That is amazing, and so that lets me move on to the topic, which again I didn't know about till recently, was your Yellow Brick Road project. Can you talk a little bit about that? I'll be bringing it up on the screen as well.
Yeah, well, thank you. As I said, I got to know several Palestinians following the murder. Actually, they reached out to me, which is very beautiful, because they said, we see that you don't blame us all. And over the course of time, I met with a couple of them, a few more. And I asked one of them, I said, so what do you want to do with your life? And he lives in a refugee camp, so-called refugee camp. And he says, I want to stay and make the environment better. So I understood in the last few years that there's two problems. Well, there's many problems, but there's two major issues in Palestinian Authority Narnia land. One would be, as we've talked about, the incentive to murder, which is a huge salary in prison. And the other problem in society is the incitement. And I don't say this lightly, because I don't think it's the moral thing to do, but I say it truthfully, that a lot of the incitement in the Palestinian Authority is Nazi-like. You have the same cartoons of Jews being maggots or pigs or monkeys, vermin. So that when you look at the incitement, which is rampant in their school curriculums, it's in their songs, their music, their summer camps, it's in every fabric of Palestinian society. So I understood through the Yellow Brick Road, okay, on one hand I'm dealing with the, incentive with the British government, stopping the funding. But with the Yellow Brick Road, I wanted to do with my friend like a little after-school club. Get the kids off the street, right? Because children who don't have anything to do after school, and if they go to school at all, and we really are just I'm not there. Obviously, everything has to be done virtually. And the plan was to teach them English, first of all, because if they learn English, it opens up their world. Because at the moment, all they have is Islam, radical Islam, and very perverse, warped curriculum of the Palestinian Authority. So we understood to teach them English and computer skills, it's so educational, and they'll understand that life isn't how they're being taught. So why is it called the Yellow Brick Road? My favourite movie, Wizard of Oz. So what you have a scarecrow who has to use his brain, right? He discovers he uses his mind. So we're teaching children to use their mind. And then you have the the Tin Man.
Yes.
He didn't have a heart. And we're looking at children who are being brainwashed to take a knife and murder innocent people. So the idea is, if we can teach them art and music, teach them to raise little chicks, anything to do with life, we can develop in them a sense of empathy. And lastly, through this, we want to teach them courage. And what would courage be? That they would grow up with the ability to think for themselves and with empathy, but they would be able to refute those adults who groom them and would send them to their death. So that's what we're doing. It's very small. No one's on a salary like on this, it's a voluntary project, really. I can't say where it is, obviously.
That was my next question, because you're saying it's in an UNRWA camp, and I was wondering if you could say which one it was, but...
no, can't say that.
And that's part of the shame of the whole
don't
thing.
You tell me your name is Mr. Elder.
Yeah. So, no, and that's part of the shame. As I'm looking through the site, through the Yellow Brick Road site, I see that, and it's so sad, you have to fuzz out the faces, and not only of the kids, but of the teachers, because having a peace program in a Palestinian area is a dangerous thing for the people doing it. And that's just a mind-blowing fact.
It is mind-blowing. Look, it's not overtly, its goal isn't peace, all right? I have to be really genuine here. It's not about normalization directly with Israel or anything like that. It's simply, it's an educational program. All right. Now, in the beginning, my motive, and it's still my motive is to stop these kids from growing up and committing terrorist attacks. But as it's stopped now for a while because of this corona. But when my friend was sending me WhatsApp of the little kids' activities, it did something to me too. I have to be honest. It was wonderful. I see them all singing heads and shoulders, but doing it heads and shoulders, knees. I mean, it's just there's such an innocence there, and the idea that these adults can just take something so pure and turn them into little terrorists it's so horrifying. And Elder, you're absolutely right. The fact that all the faces are blurred out, and I can't even talk about my friend, and or even say where it is.
Sure.
This, and people ignore this. You think that the British government are interested in the UNRWA? They're all so corrupt. It's disgusting.
I mean, are you seeing? I mean, again, I'm not sure if you're not talking directly to the kids, but certainly you're talking to the teachers. Are you seeing that the kids are definitely brainwashed? In the UNRWA schools, as well as I mean, are you seeing direct evidence of that? Because UNRWA denies this.
I want to be careful here because I'm not sure it's just from UNRWA. I know the UNRWA school buildings in the area, and they have murals on the outside of terrorists who've murdered Israelis. They've made no effort to take those off the walls. I know from one of the kids come and they'll say things, they'll sing jihadist songs, that kind of stuff. Now the thing is, I can't say that comes from UNRWA. It might be when they're surfing the net, on YouTube, and they're listening to these Palestinian Authority Nazi-like incitement, and then YouTube will suggest something else. I don't know, but
Mhm.
but as much as I understand, when I was in the refugee camp, I saw some. Look, first of all, inside the apartments, some were very nice, I have to say. I went in two, very, very nice. Outside, it's disgusting. Like, just pick up some trash. That's all you have to do. Just get a bag and pick up your trash. But what I do want to say is, and it was shocking to me, in this camp, so-called camp, I don't even like that word. I saw some cars, some 4x4s that Israelis would dream of, Americans would dream of.
Mhm.
Now, some of those belong to the so-called refugees, and some belong to the staff at UNRWA.
Right.
Like, what are you doing driving $500,000 car?
Yes.
I mean, do we name names? You know what I mean? It's
Right,
like,
yeah.
so things aren't always what people think they are.
Yes.
And we have to find another terminology for camp, because when you think about a refugee camp, you think of like barbed wire,
Right.
little kids coming with asking for a bowl of rice. It's not like that at all.
No,
People
no.
have shops, they have their cars,
No, absolutely.
and many
They're,
of them have chosen to stay there.
and we've seen, I mean, certainly in Gaza that, people have documented, you can see that, sometimes they'll put a house up for sale and you'll look at it, it looks, really, I mean, if anything else, Arabs build beautiful houses. They know how to build
Do you remember
beautiful
those
homes.
pictures we were taking?
Yeah, I know, but but even in the camps, they might look terrible on the outside, but some of them are really gorgeous on the inside. I've seen, it's really.
Listen,
it's
I'm
amazing.
glad for anybody who wants to further their lives. I really am, and I mean that most sincerely. But what I'm not glad about is the lies, and the facade, and the lies and the hatred, the enmity that's caused against Israel, which is really just, it's watered by the likes of UNRWA.
Sure.
This poor Palestinian victimhood stuff, which is, it's moral and political nonsense.
No,
it's not an ideal situation for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And we wouldn't have moral right mind if we suggested it was, but is Israel always to blame? What have UNRWA done for 75 years? What have they
70,
done?
yeah, they just had their 70th anniversary. We were just talking about that in a recent talk. It's they're proud. I mean, I don't know why they're proud that they managed to live for 70 years, because they were supposed to be a permanent. They were supposed to be a temporary agency. They weren't supposed to be around, and then they made themselves into a permanent bureaucracy, and that's what they're celebrating, and it's insane.
Well, I tell you, the only thing they have done, I think, when it comes to, is what's his name? The guy who got up on you, Chris Gunness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
That
my
was
God.
an Oscar-winning performance when he was pretending to cry.
Yeah.
I mean, that brought us all a little light relief.
Yes.
So thank you, UNRWA,
Right.
for that
Okay.
Hollywood production.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the previous head, Pierre Krauenbuhl, once, at a press conference, he actually name-checked me because he was saying, yeah, we read, because essentially he admitted, like, every time I would point out a Facebook post of an UNRWA teacher, or that there was a school that, that was teaching something that, they would watch it, they would take that specific thing down, but they, of course, never fixed the whole system top to bottom. They just said, okay, we'll just get rid of that from the internet so people can't talk about it anymore. And it's just, it's completely nuts.
And I know from my friends who went to school there when they were younger in these different schools. You think about, you think about the millions this organisation has. My friend told me, he said, and in this particular place it's quite high elevation, so in the winter it's freezing cold. And he said that they didn't even have heaters on. They didn't even have heat in the school. In the summer they don't have air conditioning, so the little kids are like dripping with sweat, and in the winter they're freezing.
Mm-hmm.
Where is all the money going?
Yeah.
Where does the money go?
And that's the weird thing is that a lot of it does
to
go
get
to
those
education.
trucks that you were talking about.
Who knows? Yeah, there's definitely. I mean, we found out again from that same Pierre Crownbull. We know that there's corruption in UNRWA because he had his little his aide who he ended up flying all over the world with himself. For his little mistress, and it was okay. So that caused a slight ripple in the world, and then everybody forgot about it.
Actually, Elder, you reminded me something. Maybe I shouldn't say it on this Zoom thing. I'll tell you afterwards.
Okay,
I'll tell you afterwards.
Not a problem.
Sorry, guys.
It's
I'm
okay.
so sorry.
Yeah. Okay. I'll learn something juicy afterwards, but I won't be able to share it either, so that's good. Anyway, the other thing I saw, there was a tweet that you did recently where you said you also crowdsourced Palestinian businesses. Can you talk about that?
Yes, for for sure. One was a um, sorry. One was a brewery, actually.
Really?
Good job.
I guess it was Christians.
I prefer wine. I like beer if it's hard, but it was somewhere over in the, Judean Samaria, the West Bank.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend, he wanted to make beer, and I said, well, why do you want to make beer? And he said, because if we can get the Hamas and the Palestinian Authority drunk, maybe we will have peace. So I just thought that was kind of a neat idea. And
Innovative.
I don't know if they ever went in there and drank anything, but he has a very small homemade microbrewery.
Mm-hmm.
And what is great about this, how did I crowdfund? I just write a few sentences, stick it up on Facebook. Needed a graphic designer, needed somebody who worked with beer, who could advise him. And it was really a huge community effort. Mostly Jewish people, Israelis, wanted to help this guy. And today, look, everything in the light of Corona, it's not really happening at the moment, but you're giving somebody the dignity of work,
Sure.
and you're not just accepting free donations. So that was one thing. Of course, it's good for me. I got a whole crate of the stuff. It's very nice. And the other thing that was done through crowdfunding was actually, it was a Palestinian Christian, lovely, lovely man. And he was one of these people who messaged me and he says, thank you for not blaming us. And we met. I said, what do you want to do then? And he said he wants to be a tour guide. So that, of course, touched my heart, being a tour guide myself. And he's obviously, because of the political map, he can only guide in his area, so to speak. So I thought about it, and he has very good access to internationals who come and visit colleges and universities there. And there's some, like you've mentioned it, Elder, a lot of anti-Semitism. And I said to him, let's make a deal. If I can get enough money that we get you an old car, if you can get to these VIPs first of all, and you take them to the biblical sites. If you think about the lay of the land, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all the battles with the Israelites and the kingdom of Judah, it didn't happen in Tel Aviv. It happened on that side of the political map.
Sure.
So I asked him if he'd be prepared to show these people the Hebrew Bible, and he was thrilled. And so once again through social media, we got enough donations in 2 days to buy him a little car, and
Wow.
he's doing very, very well.
Again, it's very impressive. It sounded like the brewer was probably also Christian, because there's no way that a Muslim is going to be making alcohol.
You would be surprised.
Really?
You would be surprised.
Are you hearing anything about? Because again, that's another thing that people don't talk about is Christian, how they're treated under the Palestinian rule. Because obviously they're fleeing. There are very few. Are you in touch with a number of Palestinian Christians?
I am. I will tell you one terrible event. I haven't actually spoken with this man for a while. Palestinian Christian, has a little church it's on the internet. It has a little church in Bethlehem. Now these guys, I always say, if you're pro-Palestinian, I'm pro-people.
Mm-hmm.
Speak out for the Palestinian Christians, because this man has been shot at 5 times. He's had his church bombed twice.
Wow.
And he's he's still around to tell the tale. Now, who does the bombings? Who does the shootings? It's not the Zionists, it's not Israel, it's the Muslims.
Sure.
Palestinian Muslims. So I'm sometimes in touch with them. Obviously it's very, very precarious, and this is the other thing. For any of us who want relationship with Palestinians, we have to be so careful, because we're putting them in danger. And I don't hear anybody talking about this in the international community.
And that's
nobody.
The insanity is, like, the word normalization is like the biggest insult in not just the Palestinian world. It used to be in the Arab world. It's not so much so in the Arab world, as we saw this month from these Ramadan TV series that were surprisingly not anti-Jewish and not anti-Zionist as much, but the fierce Palestinian reaction to these series is like saying, normalization is the worst thing. That woman in Gaza, Hind Khudari, who essentially, tagged the Hamas police to arrest the Gazans
Yes.
who were on the Zoom meeting with Israelis. She wrote an article in Electronic Intifada saying, there is no worse sin than normalization, and it's an insane way of thinking. It's a fundamentally anti-Semitic way of thinking. It's like, here, the only people in the world that you're not allowed to talk to are Jews, and it's only Israeli Jews, because obviously Israeli Arabs they consider Palestinians. So Israeli Jews are the only people in the world that are so awful you're not even allowed to talk to them. And it's just like it's and that's what you're talking about. You're saying that just you're helping them is endangering them because of the sheer hate that the rest of the Palestinians are taught, whether it's on TV, whether it's in schools, whether it's in the rest of their media, and and you're fighting against that, and it's like, again, my hat's off to you. It's amazing that given what you've had to go through, and you're the one that's up to bat for these people more than anybody else, is a person who's a victim of that hate that these people grew up with. It's remarkable.
I'll tell you something. Thank you, Elder. That's very nice of you to say so. I'll tell you something else that, and I know from my Palestinian Muslim friends, culturally Muslim, Ramadan, whatever. I know this from two friends of mine. If they don't go to the mosque, okay, they get like the mosque brigade coming around their house and saying, you haven't been to the mosque. Why haven't you been to the mosque? Mm-hmm. So even cultural Muslims who might not have any like faith or whatever it's called in the Islamic world, they're hounded by these radicals to go to the mosque.
Yeah. Yesterday there were a couple of arrests for people that, I don't know if they were Muslim or Christian, but people who were drinking during Ramadan during the day, and the police arrested them because, hey, we can't. So so it's a law. I mean, it's insane that and people say, and the left wing and the people that pretend to be pro-Palestinian on their side, they don't say a word about this, even though this is completely against everything they claim to be for. You're the only true liberal. That's the crazy thing. You're the one that's acting like a progressive liberal. You're the one that's actually trying to help the Palestinians become better people and improve their lives, while these people are the ones that are defending the terror. It's
Well,
insane.
what I'd like to see from the left wing, can we name and shame?
Of course, absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like people like J Street.
Yes.
Okay?
Oh yeah.
J Street. I mean, I asked for a meeting with Jeremy Ben-Ami a few years ago. He flatly refused. He hadn't got time. They talk about, we're pro-peace, pro-this. There's not one, I haven't seen one, tweet, Facebook page, post. I've seen nothing of them speaking out against the brutality that Palestinian Christians suffer from. I've seen nothing about them talking about funding terrorists in Israeli jails. Nothing. So if you're so pro-peace, it's exactly what you're saying. What are you doing to actually support the local Palestinian population who want emancipation from their own leadership? What are you doing? You're doing nothing. You're just like nurturing their victimhood, nourishing their victimhood, and making sure that the people who are responsible for this intolerable situation the Palestinians find themselves in is Israel. And you've done it so well because you whittle away everything. In the end, it boils down to anti-Semitism.
Absolutely.
You can be a Jew and be an anti-Semite.
Yes, that's for sure.
We can see that with the likes of J Street. We can see that with the likes with Ariel Gold.
Absolutely, and if not now, and Jewish Voice for Peace. I mean, Jewish Voice for Peace is setting up a Nakba Day thing right now. It's just like it's completely insane. They're actively. I mean, J Street at least doesn't pretends that it's. That it has, that it's both pro-Israel, pro-peace. These other guys are like not even pretending. They're absolutely saying whatever it is the Jews are to blame, no matter what. I told you right before the session, I saw a tweet from I already forgot who, saying that the organization called Who Profits. I think it was retweeted by Jewish Voice for Peace, in which they said that the Jews that are, not the Jews, the Palestinians who were workers in the that go to Israel to work. 67,000 of them are being allowed to go back into Israel to work, because as the coronavirus restrictions are easing, and so what happens is Israel's saying, we're providing you with masks, we're providing you with gloves, we're providing you with health insurance, and we're ensuring that you don't have to go back and forth, since Israelis are far more likely to have coronavirus than Palestinians, we're ensuring that you don't have to go back and forth, that you have a place to stay, while you're here, so you don't keep going back and forth and spread it. And the Sahu prophet says, "Oh look, Israel's not letting them go back during Ramadan. They're forcing them to stay." And it's like, this is to save their lives, It's like, what? And this is to save their lives, and they're saying, no, this is the terrible thing they're doing, and they're keeping them under close restriction. It's like, yeah, otherwise their families are going to get this because they're far more likely to get it. And it's like, they're doing everything they can to stop. It's like, what? And
It reminds me of this joke, all right?
Okay.
This guy walks into a lamppost and he says, "Anti-Semite."
But it's crazy what's going on, and I'm sure we could talk about this for a long time. But this, as it is there any other message that you'd like to get across?
Yes. Listen, tweets. I don't know. If we've got one viewer left, you've done ever so well. I do, and it's got nothing to do with politics.
More than one viewer.
It's the we're all living in a very surreal, almost dystopian, different state than we were 2 months ago. And it's not like I'm some world fountain of knowledge, but I think in the forest 9 years ago I got a doctorate on I started my doctorate, so to speak, on how to cope with trauma and life and change. And so I say this in all seriousness. It's like the corona. I think it's like, I'll put it in my situation. With the attack, the parallel with the corona is I realized way too late in life, I realized that I wasn't in control. I'm not in control. I always thought this stuff happened to other people, but I never thought it could happen to me. So in a sense, this lack of control, this chaos that I felt 9 years ago, we can feel it in society today. There's so many unemployed, and we don't know what's going to be, So all I want to say is that I never obviously thought that I would be talking to you. Never thought I'd get through the forest. But I think I'm where I am today because I've taken life, just as that walk back through the forest, I've taken it one step at a time. And sometimes in the corona, or when things are so pressurized for me and we can be so anxious, just a little advice from Dr. K. Just take it one step at a time. It's not worth looking into the future. It's too anxiety inducing. That's all I wanted to say. I wanted to use this Zoom conversation. We can only do it one minute at a time, 1 hour at a time. That's the best advice I could give anybody.
And coming from you and seeing all the accomplishments that you've done since then, that's amazingly good advice, because it shows that one step at a time could really end up bringing fantastic results. And as I said before, and I'll say it again, you're a remarkable person. Thank you so much for being on, and this was really wonderful. So I wish you that we get on the other side of this corona thing, health and happiness, and that everything gets back to normal or even better as it was before. Thanks for everything that you do, and that's about it. So for now, we're going to be thanks. Thank you.
No, that's fine. You can hang tight afterwards if you don't.
You're right. Yeah. Just to say the next show is planned to be my next guest is planned to be Professor Andrew Pessin from Connecticut University, I believe, Connecticut College. He's himself has experienced a bit of anti-Semitism. He became an expert on anti-Semitism on campus in the U.S., so we're going to be speaking to him. As always, if you want to give any money both to
good job.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, Elder's actually asking. Good job.
Not only for Kay's charities that she's been doing, you can definitely ask her on Twitter, but also to Elder as well, so we can keep doing these sort of shows. We've been doing this during the crisis. We hope to keep doing it for a long time because we're having a good time. But thank you very much for everybody and everybody's help, and for everybody that's still watching. 12 people still right now, and we are, and I'm sure many, many more are going to be watching this afterwards. But for now, thanks a lot. Thanks you, Kay, and we will see you the next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, it's done.